Trump dealt crushing blow as Australian leader hits back in a dramatic escalation of tensions that has rattled both Washington and Canberra political circles. The fallout from a recent exchange has intensified into a diplomatic confrontation with far-reaching implications. The dispute began when Donald Trump made remarks criticizing Australia's policies on defensive spending and regional alliances, suggesting that the country was not carrying its weight in supporting U.S. strategic interests in the Indo Pacific region. The comments, which quickly spread through international media, triggered an immediate and forceful response from the Australian Prime Minister, who accused Trump of undermining a long-standing alliance built on trust, mutual respect, and shared sacrifice in wars and conflicts over decades. The rebuke marks one of the sharpest public pushbacks from an Australian leader against a former U.S. president whose influence continues to loom large in global politics. In his initial remarks, Trump accused Australia of being too reliant on American military support while reaping the benefits of security guarantees without contributing sufficiently to joint operations. He implied that Washington was being taken advantage of and that alliances like the one with Australia should be reassessed or negotiated under more favorable terms for the United States. He went further by suggesting that Canberra's growing engagement with regional partners such as Japan and India was happening at the expense of America's leadership. Trump's comments framed the issue as one of loyalty and questioned whether allies like Australia could truly be counted on in the event of a major crisis with China or North Korea. These pointed criticisms were met with immediate outrage in Australia, where leaders from across the political spectrum condemned the tone and substance of his remarks, arguing that they misrepresented the facts of Australia's defensive contributions and international commitments. The Australian Prime Minister wasted no time in responding, appearing before the press in Canberra to deliver a scathing rebuke. He reminded Trump and the international community that Australia has fought alongside American forces in every major conflict since World War I, including the Korean War, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He cited the sacrifices of Australian soldiers and the deep cultural ties between the two nations, arguing that no alliance in the modern era has been as consistent or dependable as the one between Canberra and Washington. The Prime Minister declared that Australia would never be intimidated into questioning its sovereignty or its right to pursue independent regional strategies, including building stronger ties with Asian democracies. He accused Trump of playing politics with an alliance that transcends party lines and warned that rhetoric like this could embolden adversaries who seek to exploit divisions within the Western Bloc. The comments from both sides have already sparked a wave of commentary among analysts who see the clash as a test of resilience in the U.S.-Australia relationship. Many experts note that Trump's approach to foreign policy has always emphasized transactional calculations, often treating allies as competitors rather than partners. This has at times left countries like Australia feeling pressure to prove their value, while also raising fears that American commitments might waver under a leadership focused narrowly on cost-benefit analyses. In contrast, the current Australian government has sought to diversify its regional ties, particularly in the face of rising tensions with China, which remains its largest trading partner. Canberra has simultaneously expanded defensive cooperation with the U.S., including hosting rotational deployments of American Marines in Darwin and investing heavily in joint submarine projects under the AUKUS agreement. Yet despite these efforts, Trump's remarks suggest a lingering skepticism about Australia's role and reliability. If he were to regain political power in Washington, his stance could reshape how the alliance functions in practical terms. Already, Australian officials are quietly expressing concern that a second Trump presidency might demand greater financial commitments from Canberra or even threaten to pull back American assets if expectations are not met. In private briefings, diplomats acknowledged that Trump's transactional worldview could strain not only bilateral ties but also multilateral initiatives in the Indo-Pacific that depend on trust and collective action. This includes the core partnership with Japan and India, which Australia sees as essential to balancing China's influence. The Australian leader's sharp response has meanwhile been widely praised domestically, with commentators noting that it struck a balance between defending national pride and reaffirming the value of the U.S. alliance. Opinion polls in Australia show broad support for the partnership with Washington, but also a strong desire for independence in foreign policy. Many Australians remember past moments of tension, including Trump's heated phone call with a former Prime Minister in 2017 over refugee resettlement agreements. That incident left a lasting impression and highlighted how volatile the relationship could become under his leadership. In the current episode, the Prime Minister made clear that Australia would not allow its contributions to be dismissed or diminished on the global stage. Internationally, the confrontation is being watched closely by other U.S. allies who have faced similar criticisms from Trump during his presidency. European partners such as Germany and France have previously been accused of failing to meet NATO spending commitments, and South Korea faced pressure to increase payments for hosting American troops. That pushback from Australia may therefore resonate across allied capitals as a signal that countries are prepared to stand up to Washington's demands. Framed in terms that appear disrespectful or dismissive, analysts argue that while Trump's criticisms may they appeal to domestic audiences who support his America First agenda, they risk alienating allies at a time when global security challenges require unity and coordination. The economic dimension of the dispute should not be overlooked. The trade between the US and Australia remains robust, covering everything from defense contracts to agricultural goods. Critics of Trump's remarks warn that undermining confidence in the alliance could have knock-on effects in business sectors where trust and stability are critical. Already there are murmurs within the Australian defense industry about the risks of becoming overly dependent on American technology if political instability threatens long-term cooperation. This comes as Australia prepares to make unprecedented investments in nuclear-powered submarines in partnership with the US and UK, a project that will shape its defensive posture for decades to come. Back in Washington, reaction to the controversy has been mixed, with Trump's supporters praising him for speaking plainly and holding allies accountable, while his critics accuse him of alienating a loyal partner. Democrats in Congress have highlighted the episodes as evidence of why America's credibility could be at stake if Trump were to return to power. They argue that alliances are built on trust and that questioning the loyalty of close friends like Australia weakens America's standing in the world. Republicans align with Trump, however, have doubled down, suggesting that allies must indeed pay more and stop free-riding on American security guarantees. The divide reflects broader debates in U.S. politics about the role of alliances and the balance between domestic priorities and international commitments. The timing of the clash adds further significance as both the U.S. and Australia are navigating sensitive geopolitical waters. Tensions with China remain high over Taiwan and the South China Sea. North Korea continues to expand its missile program, and global energy markets are volatile due to conflicts in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. In this environment, unity among allies is seen as critical to deterring aggression and maintaining stability. Yet the war of words between Trump and the Australian leader risks giving adversaries a perception of discord within Western alliances. Military strategists warn that even rhetorical cracks in unity can be exploited by rivals through propaganda, cyber operations, or diplomatic maneuvers aimed at peeling allies away from the American orbit. For now, Australian officials are attempting to contain the fallout by emphasizing that the alliance with the US remains strong despite disagreements. They point to ongoing joint military exercises, intelligence sharing and coordination in multilateral forums as evidence that cooperation continues unabated behind the scenes. However, there is recognition that Trump's criticisms cannot be ignored, especially given his continued influence over the Republican Party and his position as a leader contender in the next presidential race. Canberra is quietly engaging with American lawmakers and policy thinkers to reinforce the importance of the alliance and to counter narratives that portray Australia as anything less than a full and reliable partner. The broader question is how this dispute will shape public perceptions in both countries. In the US, Trump's remarks may resonate with voters who feel weary of global commitments and skeptical of foreign entanglements. In Australia, the Prime Minister's strong pushback is likely to bolster his standing as a defender of national pride and sovereignty, but it also raises questions about how Australia should navigate a world where American politics can shift abruptly and unpredictably. Some experts suggest that the episode could accelerate Canberra efforts to deepen ties with other partners such as India, Japan and European democracies, creating a more balanced foreign policy that reduces reliance on Washington while still valuing the alliance. Ultimately, the confrontation underscores the challenges of managing alliances in an era of populist politics where leaders often prioritize domestic audiences over diplomatic sensitivities. Trump's remarks and the Australian leader's response may fade from headlines in the coming weeks, but the underlying issues they highlight will remain unresolved. How much allies should contribute to joint defense, and how to balance national sovereignty with alliance obligations, and whether trust can survive when transactional calculations dominate diplomacy. These are questions that will define the future of the US-Australia relationship and by extension the stability of the Indo Pacific region. The crushing blow dealt to Trump's rhetoric by the Australian leader is not merely a matter of words. It reflects a deeper clash between two visions of international partnerships, one that sees alliances as enduring bonds forged in history and shared sacrifice, and another that views them through the lens of short-term deals subject to constant renegotiation. For Australia, the message was clear: it will not be lectured or diminished on the global stage. For Trump, the backlash is a reminder that America's allies are not passive actors, but sovereign nations capable of defending their dignity and interests. As this story unfolds, the world will be watching to see whether this rupture becomes a turning point or simply another chapter in the turbulent saga.